So, speaking of weather phenomenon and stuff in the sky, the firmament.
Yes.
Okay.
All right,
So
this was something I wanted to talk about or come up in like Genesis, so the first chapter, because you got the darkness on the face of the water, and then he divides the water from the firmament. And I looked
Yep.
up the word firmament, and it means to hang on.
I've actually never looked that up, so that's interesting.
Yeah, because I wanted to know, because I always sort of just assumed the firmament was kind of when he divides the water from the firmament, you kind of in your mind just imagine it's the water from the land, but it's not. So Strong's H7549 brachia, a concrete now meaning firmament expanse, the expanse.
Extended surface expanse.
Yeah, a primitive
Flat.
meaning to spread out. So,
And it also says a vault of heaven supporting waters above.
yeah.
So that's interesting.
So there's waters above and waters below. I had this way out thought once because I was looking up this stuff. It's liquid hydrogen. You ever seen liquid hydrogen? When
I've seen liquid nitrogen.
No, liquid hydrogen. They get hydrogen super cold and it turns to a liquid. And yeah, they have to do it in like a vacuum. Getting back to the waters, I was talking about the liquid hydrogen, and I had this idea because it's another one of those things, when sometimes, like, but I was kind of praying one morning, and I said to God, why is the sky blue? And I know it sounds like a kiddie, something a kid would say, but I was thinking, why is it blue? I think I watched some flat Earth stuff, just trying to think, why do people believe this? Why is it this way? And I kind of got this answer back, and I'm thinking, well, this isn't really me because I'm not that smart, when it comes to science and things like that. So the answer I got back was that it's the gases in the upper atmosphere.
But it's really interesting about that. You said it has to do with gases in the sky, right?
Well, I thought about it, right, because we have all the table of elements, and then you got your heaviest element, which seems to go lower in the earth, and so the lighter elements rise. We know we've got. I mean, our air is a gas that we breathe, and higher up. So I looked it up, and higher up in the atmosphere, there's different gases at different levels. There's helium. Going on like what the lighter gases are. And so when I had this, I looked it up, and it's true. They can't really test because it's so high in the atmosphere, but right high up in the atmosphere as the oxygen sort of levels off, and then you have helium and different gases.
Right.
So obviously the Earth is producing different gases, methane, and I'm always talking about the greenhouse effect, and so it's there. It's fact. They're telling us we've got different gases in the upper atmosphere. And also, then I started thinking, well, you've got neon lights, different colors. So I think they put gas in a tube, so helium, different gases, and put an electrical wave through it, which creates the light. And those particular gases have different lights. So when you look up hydrogen, it reflects a blue color. So we've got the ocean, which is H2O, so half hydrogen and oxygen.
Hey YouTube, welcome back to Sparkstarter channel. I just want to share with you another application for these little mini magnifier Tesla coils. I 3D printed out a little stand for this guy, and he's going to be energizing these little collection of gas tubes. We've got helium, xenon, neon, argon, and krypton. Yeah, let me power this guy up here. And we take our little mini magnifier coil and we just bring it next to these tubes, and you can see just illuminate them. Really interesting pattern in the xenon. Neon really glows. Argon, krypton. So with the help of 3D printer, I made this little stand here. It'll hold the bulbs. Let's pop in a helium here. See it glow. Add That's helium. Let's try xenon. Xenon has some really interesting patterns. There's neon. Argon. Interesting to see these sort of little striations these in the argon. Krypton. So another thing I'd like to try with my tube collection is I'm going to try to get some spectroscope lines. I'm going to position my tubes right here. So I have my spectrum scale here. Got a little slot where the light will shine through. Hit the diffraction grating here, and the spectrum will be cast across the scale. So I'm going to put my bulb. We'll start with, if you can see, that's helium. Put that there. Got my little magnifier coil all set up here. Just move this guy nice and close. I'll put the cover back on my spectroscope. All right, so the light from the helium should be visible in our spectroscope. Let's check it out. So we're looking at the helium spectrum right now. This is the neon spectrum. This is the xenon spectrum. This is the argon spectrum. This is the krypton spectrum. All right, so this concludes our experiment with the gaseous tubes and the spectroscope.
But what's also interesting about that is that the sun, I heard that the sun is mainly a blue color, or like, so all the different colors are in the sun. That's how, when you see like a prism or like the Pink Floyd thing, all those colors are in the sun, but the one that we mainly see is blue. So whether it's because it's reflecting off of all the gases or whatever, but I just remember reading that.
That's interesting. Because hydrogen with this certain electrical frequency, because everything's waves, right? When
Mhm.
the light waves go through it, it reflects blue. Unless it's on a certain angle and the waves, I can't remember what it was, but it was either the waves at a higher intensity from the sun, the waves are shorter, and then as the sun kind of goes down, wherever it goes down and around, whatever, as the sun goes down, the wave particles of light are bigger. And so hydrogen reflects with the bigger wavelengths of light, more of an orange red color, which is what we get in the sunset, or
Yeah.
purples. Yeah, so like you look, it's all I kind of, this is what I looked up in neon light. So it depends on the wavelength of the electricity that you put through the gas is the color that it reflects. So I started to think, okay, so we've got these gases in our atmosphere, and we've got the sun with the electromagnetic waves coming from it off onto the earth. And this is just complete theory in my head that I checked out, and scientifically it seems to make sense that our atmosphere has these gases in it, which that's why the sky's blue, that's why the ocean's blue. They say the ocean's blue because it reflects the sky, right? So we've got the firmament, the water's divided from the water, and then I came across liquid hydrogen. So it's only sort of a fairly recent discovery that they've made because they needed the technology. So in the 19th century, and it's super cold. So water will freeze when it gets really, really cold, but hydrogen turns to liquid at really low temperatures, and they have to do it in a vacuum. So they have to put the hydrogen in a vacuum and cool it. And like, what do you have in space? They keep saying space is a vacuum, and I'm like, well, everyone's always sort of like, oh, this what's space made up of? Nothing. There's like, it's just a vacuum. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe it's actually like a liquid hydrogen. I mean, this is a complete theory.
No, I like that.
It's a
I like that
theory,
actually.
but the dividing of the waters from the waters. What does that mean exactly? That's just my thought on space. And then you get back to, did they go to space? Well, if it's liquid hydrogen, then probably not. I mean, they say that space is super, super cold, right? So if there was
So is the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, if there was well, what's at the bottom of the ocean? Is it liquid hydrogen, or is it?
Right. It could be the same thing.
Yeah, as it warms up, it releases into the atmosphere, through and that's where you get all these kind of, I mean, I know there's methane gases and different types of gases, but, with the volcanoes heating the water up, maybe it releases into gas and then hypothetically into the atmosphere, and because it's lighter than oxygen, it heads up. It's just a theory, but I looked up about the sky being blue online when I had the thought, and no one was talking about it. And then a couple of years later, some people were talking about it. There were some theories out there that's why. But when I start to think of, okay, the water in the Bible in Genesis, the waters were divided from the water, or from the firmament. What's the firmament means? Hanging and spreading out. So whatever's dividing the earth and the planets and what have you.
Well, I tend to think that there really is some sort of dome. I really do. Okay. I do think that the 7 days, or the 6 days of creation, 7-day rest, I do think that's literal, but I also absolutely think there's a symbolic meaning behind it all. The reason I think it's literal is, I have a bunch of different reasons, but with the firmament, let's just pretend it's like a dome over the earth. Yeah. Have you ever looked at rockets that, when they send them to space, every single time it goes in a curve? Have you seen? Just look up rockets curve on Google. Yeah. And they all, why? Now they try and tell you, which is a Jesuit tactic, that it's an optical illusion, and you're not really seeing it. You're not seeing that. It's just an optical illusion. Yeah. Are you kidding me? Like, you can see it with your own eyes. I mean, I love that one. It's just, no, you don't. You don't see that. You're not. It's just an illusion. That's Or like, have you ever seen Elon Musk's video with his car in space? Like, it's literally CGI. I can't believe people actually believe this. When I saw Elon Musk's, because I was watching somebody that showed it. I haven't seen his entire. My gosh, like, it is the whole thing, the rockets, the car that he put in space, it's all CGI. Yep. And people believe it.
Space on our test flight. You can tell it's real because it looks so fake, honestly.
NASA SpaceX liftoff on historic mission. The second try was a charm as SpaceX and NASA made history at 3:22 p.m. Yeah, 3:22 p.m. It had to be.
You can tell it's real because it looks so fake, honestly.
It's kind of hard to find it now without like a bunch of commentary and stuff.
Yep. If you think about it, if the upper atmosphere, oxygen's a gas. If it's the lighter gases, then they could hypothetically they send satellites up. They would be lightweight, sort of like having a helium balloon.
I don't doubt that
Would they be
there's
able to
stuff up there.
suspend them in that gas? I don't know. Maybe that's the dome. Maybe it's just because of the temperature of the Earth, and it is actually the greenhouse effect. It's those gases separate outer space to, and the temperature variation from the sun and the Earth and everything puts those elements into a gas form rather than, say, hydrogen, which will be in a gas form until it gets super cold, which will be in a liquid form.
There were more surprises ahead. In the 1930s, another strange phenomenon was observed at even lower temperatures. This rapidly evaporating liquid helium cools until at 2 degrees above absolute zero, a dramatic transformation takes place.
Suddenly, you see that the bubbling stops and that the surface of the liquid helium is completely still. The temperature is actually being lowered even further now, but nothing particularly is happening. Well, this is really one of the great phenomenon in 20th century physics.
The liquid helium had turned into a superfluid, which displays some really odd properties.
Here I have a beaker with an unglazed ceramic bottom of ultrafine porosity.
Ordinarily, this container with tiny pores can hold liquid helium. But the moment the helium turns superfluid, it leaks through.
We call this kind of flow a superflow.
Superfluid helium can do things we might have believed impossible. It appears to defy gravity. A thin film can climb walls and escape its container. This is because a superfluid has zero viscosity. It can even produce a frictionless fountain, one that never stops flowing. Superfluidity and superconductivity were baffling concepts for scientists. New radical theories were needed to explain them.
So here, I have a theory. Have you ever heard of the Van Allen belt?
Yeah.
It's the reason why.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Radiation belt. Is that not maybe just the firmament? Like that they're just because they're saying that they can't go past it. They're claiming that they can't go past the Van Allen belt. What if that's just the firmament? Have you ever looked at videos that people took looking at the planets in a telescope? It looks like they're underwater.
Yes.
It
Right. Yes.
looks like or if they look at stars, it looks like they're in water. That's really what it looks
Inhuman
like.
telescopes myself. Yeah, they're kind of all shimmery, like colors and reflective, and yeah.
Celestial bodies. Like, now, I don't think that there's other planets. I think that those are just stars. I mean, you can call them planets if you want, but I mean, even their own definition of planets don't make sense. And I'll still never forget when I was like 6 years old, I was in class and I told the teacher that I didn't think that the planets were planets because they told me that they were balls of gas. And I was like, how is that the same as this? Like, how is that even? Because it didn't make sense. So I just think that they're the same thing as stars, just different, like maybe colors or something like that. Because I honestly believe we're the only place that is inhabited. I do believe that.
Much from the electric universe, people.
I've heard of it. Can you explain some of that?
I don't know if they're kind of a setup too. I think there's some information coming out, about the universe is electric, basically. I think this is true. They have they call it, I think it's I haven't watched it for a long time, but I think it's the pinch effect. So there's electrical streams through space, and they've done scientific tests in labs and stuff where there's a pinch point where the electricity sort of, I'm probably butchering this but it's where it sort of meets and it creates, like the sun, the electrical currents, and they sort of at that point will create like a sun. You'd have to watch it. Like, it's hard. I can't explain it probably because I don't know the actual scientific sort of.
So are they saying that there's more than one sun?
Well, they're saying there's more than one, but it's like these fields of electricity. They're saying through space going on. They're saying the universe is electrical. So going on how electricity works here on Earth, as you run the currents, there's sort of little points where it meets and creates like a sun effect. It makes sense in this if there were sort of big electrical fields running certain points where the electricity sort of culminates and creates like
I feel like I know what you're talking about just from like seeing it in my brain where there's lines, but then every so often there's like a little bump or like a little circle
where it sort of
culminates
like
right there.
It's kind of like ley lines on Earth and stuff like that.
That's interesting. I don't think there's more than one sun though. So I have my own theories on the sun because the Bible does say that God created two great lights, a greater light and a lesser light. That's why I think the moon is a light. I don't think it's reflecting anything. I think that it's a plasma light. I actually think that the sun is a plasma light. There's this really old, I think it's from like 1940 or 1950, but this scientist was talking about how the sun and the moon are plasma lights. And I just thought that was so interesting because what's also in our blood? Plasma. You need the sun to live, and I don't know, it's just interesting.
You start looking at plants and they've got photosynthesis with the light.
Yeah. If the moon was a plasma light, I think it's a separate light from the sun. I do not think that it's reflected. Again, the Bible says he created two great lights. Why would, if one was a rock, it would say he created one great light and a reflective rock. So I really do think that they're both lights.
You see, here is the sea, Mr. Sanders, so calm and apparently unchanging. And yet it is part of my new conception about the nature of the world at this same sea. Many times in the past history of our Earth has rolled over the surfaces of the land masses, sweeping away all life and vegetation and eventually returning again to its former bed.
This is the part of the biblical theory of the flood and the theory of people of other races.
Oh yes, this actual event, the last one, is recorded in all the sacred scriptures of all the old civilizations, from the Hindus to the Bible.
Mr. Foster, before we go on with that, you've made a number of predictions, scientific predictions, which you claim have come true. Now, what are those predictions and how do you make this claim?
Well, they are all based on the new notion that the physical invariance principles of contemporary science are invalid. And I stated this first in a manuscript reviewed in Australia in 1954. And the validity of this statement was confirmed finally last year at Princeton when the principle of time reversal invariance was found to be invalid.
Well, who accepts the fact that you have made these predictions accurately?
Well, the facts as such are undeniable and must be accepted because they're documented And it was accepted as such at Oxford, at the Tasmanian University, and also at the National University. The facts as such are accepted, but the explanations and the new views as yet are not.
Do you mean to say that you reject all the basic principles of science established since Aristotle's day?
No, it does not mean that. I state and maintain that those concepts and interpretations of science, which are still based today on Aristotelian logic, have a certain purpose, but that is defined by a statement as that a spade is a spade or a fine chisel is a fine chisel. But these concepts are inadequate for a complete understanding of the real nature of the world.
How is it possible, Mr. Foster, that you as an individual can work out these theories when all the other established scientists have computers and all the money of governments behind them, and yet they apparently can't?
Well, I do not claim at all that it is due to my own intellect or to my own penetration. I have been deeply interested from early youth in the real nature of the world, and I held my own views and ideas. But many years ago, about 14 years ago, when I was challenging one of the fundamental conventional principles of science, I had a definite inspiration, not knowledge as such, but an indication and a guidance which I followed and which I worked very hard and to evolve into a new structure of understanding.
Inspirations are related to thoughts of genius. Do you think or consider yourself to be a genius?
No. I consider myself to be an ordinary, humble person who wants to serve mankind with what man has striven for from the beginning of consciousness, with truth and understanding of the world.
Well, now, one thing, you have a theory about the moon, and we expect to be able to get observable facts about the moon fairly soon. What is your theory?
Well, it is by now rather more than a theory. 10 or 11 years ago, I stated to various scientists that the moon is not a piece of rock, but it is a plasma phenomenon, a cosmic plasma, and that this fact will eventually be confirmed. I made certain predictions which were already confirmed in 1958, and the situation now is coming close to a complete confirmation.
What will be the result if you're proved to be correct in your theories?
The result will be profound and decisive, because it will give proof that a complete reinvestigation of the laws of nature is necessary. Because if the moon is a plasma, no man will ever land on it. The soft landing attempts will all fail. That means that the mass of the moon is far less than is currently assumed. It's in a different state of energy, and it has far less mass. That means there is no more explanation for the tides. If the moon, for example, had only 1,000th part of its current mass, then the tides would only be 2 inches high under conventional theories instead of sometimes 14 feet. And that means that if it is proved that the moon is a plasma, then all gravitational theories are out, and a new concept of the cosmos and of its laws has to be evolved.
Aren't you being a bit adventurous, though, because you know that we're going to be able to test out your theories on the moon fairly soon?
Well, not anymore. 11 years ago, of course, it was rather taking a risk. I was considered a lunatic, of course, but by now the evidence, accumulated evidence, is already so much in my favor that I'm not taking any risks anymore. On the contrary, there is scientific views expressed all over the world now that the moon seems to be of a quite different nature of what was assumed.
But the Americans and Russians are thinking of landing men on it.
Well, that will never happen. The moon is definitely, as I assert, a plasma.
Isn't there a slight contradiction? You mentioned the moon and the tides, Mr. Foster, and at the earlier part of the interview you talked about the tides sweeping over the Earth.
Well, there is no contradiction there, because once the moon is proven not to be a piece of rock, but something of far less mass, and the gravitational theories are out and discarded, new concepts have to be involved which will show that the lawfulness of nature in the cosmos is identical to that in a hydrogen atom or in atomic processes. And when this is understood and worked out in full, it will be found that the physical processes of the Earth are quite different in geophysics of what is at present assumed. The tides, the ordinary everyday tides, have an explanation, even if the moon had almost no mass at all, because they are field effects. They're induced by cosmic pressures which exist in the field of our solar system. So it comes again to the age-old concept that truth is the guidance, the hope, and the directive of the human mind, and that man must strive to understand and to know the real nature of the world.
And I just don't believe anything we're told about the moon. I mean, did you know that I think it's like 68 craters on the moon are named after Jesuits? Did you know that?
Really? No. Doesn't surprise
Yeah.
me, though. Well, they've got that
But
space observatory, Lucifer, haven't they?
yeah, it's literally called Lucifer. I mean, Lucifer's just Nebuchadnezzar. But back to the sun. So, because I definitely feel like you view the creation days way more spiritual and metaphorical, which completely makes sense because when you think about the third day is when God made plants and trees and seeds and then the fourth day he made the sun. How could the plants have come before the
Oh,
sun?
yeah,
You get what I'm
right.
saying?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So, look, I still think it's God. He could do whatever he wanted. He could have made it first, but I still think that is
That's
a
really
perfect
interesting,
example.
though. I was actually reading that. I'm reading the Chris Sparks Keys of the Kingdom Bible. When you go into that, it says something about he makes the seeds in that, but they don't actually grow till the sun comes.
During the third day of creation, it said that they don't come out until the sun comes.
It kind of appeared that way, so it doesn't actually say that. I think. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, yeah.
Or is
Well, I want to know. I want to know what this says. I want to know what it says because that's my favorite Bible.
Well, I'll read from day 2 because day 1 is light, so he
Yeah.
divides the light from the dark. And there was morning the first day, and it says the sky, and Elohim said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it become a dividing of waters from waters. And Elohim made the firmament, and he divided the waters underneath the firmament from the waters above the firmament. See, this is where I was sort of like, what does that mean? So I sort of thought of that liquid hydrogen sort of. Anyway, and it
Yeah.
was so. And Elohim called the firmament the heavens, and there was evening and there was morning the second day. So on the third day, and Elohim said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together to one place, and let dry ground appear. And it was so. And the dry ground Elohim called land, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. And Elohim saw that it was good. And Elohim said, let the land sprout tender grass and herb yielding seed, a fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself on the land. And it was so. And the land sprouted tender grass and herb yielding seed after its kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed is in itself after its kind. And Elohim saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning on the third day. I was reading it last night and I was kind of thinking that's a bit strange, like, because it's saying there's light and dark the first day, then it's saying the land and the seed was in the land on itself, was itself on the land. And then on the fourth day,
Yeah.
the sun, moon, and stars, and Elohim said, let there be light bearers in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years, and let them be for light bearers in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth. So yeah, you're right here saying it's saying that the moon is a light as well in itself. And it was so. And Elohim made 2 vast light bearers, the vast light bearer for dominion over the day, and the lesser light bearer and the stars for dominion over the night. And Elohim set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning the fourth day.
Well, there is something I wanted to address about the days of creation. The first chapter is definitely an overview of the creation days. And then chapter 2 is a detailed, the first one's an overview, and then the second chapter is pinpointing in on like day 6. Some people think that the chapter 1 in the Bible is a separate creation from chapter 2. Did you ever hear that?
Yes, there's a first creation,
Chapter
and
2
then
separate.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't believe that.
It doesn't make sense that there would
Mm.
be 2. 2 verse 1. So the heavens and the earth were completed, and all the multitude of them. And on the seventh day Elohim ended his work that he had carried out, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work he had carried out. And Elohim blessed the seventh day, and he set it apart, because in it he had rested from all his work that Elohim produced by making. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth, when they were created in the day of the making by Yahweh Elohim, the earth and the heavens. And every plant of the field had not yet grown on the land, and every herb of the field had not yet sprung up, for Yahweh Elohim had not sent rain on the land, and there was not a man to till the ground, and a mist went up from the land and watered the whole face of the ground. So that's where I was getting it from. Yep. So it's kind of confusing because it's talking about the creation days, and then he rested. So he's made the trees and the seeds and everything, but they don't actually grow until the mist comes up from the face of the earth, according
Right.
to this translation,
Right.
Keys of the Kingdom.
Which that's why I really do think that it was made in days, because how, like, if it wasn't days, then how could they have not done anything yet? Okay, like I don't think that it was like a crazy long amount of time. I really think that it was each day.
Yep.
And then another reason, this is kind of a tangent, but not really. But another reason to kind of prove that it was days and not like some crazy long amount of time is that Adam, who was created on the sixth day of creation, lived to be 930. So he didn't live to be. So that means, like, unless day 1 through 5 took like billions of years, which I don't believe it did, and then day 6 and 7 were like just 2 days, Adam's age was 930. You know, so
it did that from the time he ate the fruit, though, and it's
absolutely. Yes.
Like Bill Donahue, like I don't go in 100% on everything he says, but he makes some really interesting points. It's like, if Jesus is saying that what we eat doesn't corrupt us, then why is a fruit corrupting Adam and Eve? Like, it's what's that all about?
I don't think. Well, and I'm just going to give you my opinion is I don't think it was the fruit. I think it was them disobeying God. I think it was the act of disobedience, not so much the actual fruit.
Yep. So
you know,
maybe God or Elohim realized that man wasn't able to control his mind or like you've got those two hemispheres of the brain, and they weren't able to see, because God knows good and evil too, right? You'll be like God. The serpent says you'll be like God, but God can control his use of, but mankind obviously can't control it, and that's the whole process of the spiritual evolution, is that Jesus came to bring us into a place where we are able to control where we are able to be like God and sons of God.
That's what the whole
we will be able to be like that, being under control of negative issues. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it has to do with self-control and not just going on your urges and not just killing someone when you get mad. I mean, like, you have to have self-control with a bunch of things, but like also
that, like, I mean, you start looking into Jungian psychology and stuff, and you look at like a lot of what controls us, we don't even realize that's controlling us. If you want to believe that, I mean, I do. Like, a lot of our reactions to things are subliminal, like in our subconscious, that you're like, why is this happening, or why am I thinking or feeling this way, and you don't even realize what's affecting you.
You know, that's why I think that I looked into something called the triune brain, where there's 3 parts of the brain. The I don't remember them all. I just remember the one is the reptilian part, which is all about survival, and that's why they call the royal family reptiles. That's why they call them reptilians. Because if you are just basing everything off of survival, then you will kill people with no problem. You will inbreed because you want your lineage to survive. You will do all these things purely based on survival. And that's the reptilian part of the brain. And then there's like an emotional part and then like a logic part. But again, that's where this whole reptilian thing comes from, is just that triune brain theory, where there's 3 parts of the brain. And I know there's 2 hemispheres, but what I'm saying is the one part of the brain, which is the reptilian part, is also your organs. You know, you don't have to think about your liver working. You don't have to think about your whatever. They just do it, and that's what that part does. Okay, so kind of a tangent, but do you remember in the Bible where that there was the prophecy that a chosen one would be resurrected? Was that in like Jeremiah, or was that, where was that, where the prophecy came from? Because you know how Jesus fulfilled like tons of prophecies, and one of them was being resurrected.
It might be
Do you?
Jeremiah.
And
Yeah.
it might have been Isaiah though.
I mean, Genesis, the prophecy to Eve, where it says her
Absolutely
seed
right.
and
Yes.
his seed, the serpent seed. That's still hard for me to get my head around what that actually means. I mean,
Serpent seed.
yeah, but that he will bite his heel. That's all related
Right.
to Jesus. Like,
But it's also kind of like mentioned in Revelation too, the wound being healed and stuff.
this is another tangent. A lot of people think that that comes down to that Eve slept with Satan and she had Cain was Satan's child, and
Yeah, I know. I was just watching something like
and
that.
Seth was that were two different seeds.
I don't think that. I really think that it's just it has to do with Cain's lineage represents sons of disobedience, people that didn't obey God, and then Seth's lineage was that's why they showed both lineages to just show that there has always been two types of people on this earth,
And they come from the same
sons of God,
parents, right?
and they
Like, I mean, you've got Joseph and all his brothers. You've got
yeah,
Jacob and Esau,
Ishmael and
Ishmael and
Isaac.
Isaac. Same father, same parent. Well, not with Isaac and Ishmael, not the same parents, but definitely with Jacob and Esau, they're the same parents. And there's a lot of information about the battle between Jacob being chosen and Esau's children not being chosen that shows that it's genetics, but it's also but they have the same genetics. So like the people that choose to be the adversary or in opposition to God's people or God's will, Satan, the dragon people, and Esau married out of his family line, like not his family
Which
line,
was
but
disobedient.
Esau married Canaanites and people from that lineage that were disobedient, supposed to marry in an obedient lineage. And so does that mean, I mean, I think a lot of it does come down to genetics. Genetics are important to a certain extent, I think. I don't think it's a salvation thing, but I think I've spoken with you about this before, that I think it's a lot harder if you have certain genetics to fight those genetic traits. I mean, being a parent, you can see the kids inherit so much. It's not learnt behavior. I mean, quite a lot of it's learnt behavior, but a lot of it it's just natural. You could put them in a completely other different family and they'd still have those genetic traits of their family. And that goes down to inheriting the sins of the father up to 7 generations or whatever that is. I think that comes down to genetics. Well, that goes back to the Kalergi plan, that's what they wanted, this sort of slave race. And this is kind of all tied into that Sumerian Anunnaki, like people think that it's aliens and stuff, but they wanted the rulers that wanted a slave race people that they could control and manipulate, and it all keeps coming back to that. They're constantly manipulating society and what we know, and so that they can have this dumbed down slave race. And the way they do it is they pit the different races against each other. They've always done that too, like by infiltrating nations with, I mean, that's how the Persians and the Medes, when northern Israel was taken into captivity, what they did is they moved everyone around. So they took because they conquered different regions, they took the Israelites out of northern Israel and they replaced them with Arabs, like people they conquered from Arabia and different places. And so that's why like a lot of people go, oh, Middle Eastern people don't look this way, or the Syrians or the Palestinians and that, but they're not what they were 2,000 years ago. This is not against anybody anywhere. It's just they're not what they were 4,000 years ago, because it's all been mixed up and changed, and they deliberately, that was one of their policies, is to take people out of their own lands, put them somewhere foreign, and then move other people in, because that's how they conquered them. It's divide and conquer.
And they're still doing it today, though. They're still doing it today.
Because
you see it.
These families have always used these tactics, haven't they?
Right. Yeah. And again, that's why they want, you just said the families, but that's why they want you to think it's Anunnaki. Don't look at these families. It's the aliens that did it.
The lizard aliens, right? Yeah.
Right. The reptilians and stuff. It's not the reptilian brain of these psychopaths. It's the actual reptiles. And don't get me wrong, I actually looked into all that. For a while, I was like, oh, wow, is it really Anunnaki? But then when you look at where that comes from and the guy that I can't remember his name.
Zachariah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
When you look at who he was, I'm pretty sure he worked for the Rothschilds. Like, I'm almost positive. It was either them or the Rockefellers, but I think it was the Rothschilds. I always look into where something comes from. Again, futurism and preterism. Like, where did the Jesuits? Okay, so where did Zachariah Sitchin comes from? The Rothschilds.
It's too, like, when I looked into the German side of the Reformation, around that time when the printing was starting to get developed and media was easier to produce and for people to read. The first sort of newspapers and stuff that were getting printed was done by a Rothschild. So I think he was.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he was related to the Rothschild somehow. I can't remember exactly, but the big newspapers and all of the media, they were right onto that because they realized that people were, it's like the internet, like the internet first come out was great and people were sharing so much information, whether it be wrong or right, who cares? Like, it was freely open for anybody to look up anything. And now, even just looking up the Kalergi plan for me was like, I had to sift through all this, this is just a conspiracy theory, blah, 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 to actually find out any just small information who this guy was and what the plan actually is. It was all the debunking of the Kalergi plan, like pages and pages of it. Whereas in the old days, you just look something up and there was just so much freely available for you to go, okay, well, I'm going to choose this version or this version. Now it's just like they just keep pumping their version out. And it's the same with newspapers and printing back in the day. When that would have happened, people would have been printing things left, right, and center, Bible information. And then they took control of it and took control of the newspapers and the information.
Exactly.
The book printings. So book printing is another one. Like, if you wrote a book, you've got to go to a private company to print it for you. You're not going to get.
Yep.
I mean, even like with Amazon now, people write books or have online books available, and Amazon won't share them for people. There's all kinds of different doors you have to jump through to get information out there. And if they don't want it out there, they're going to make it really difficult.
I was just trying to find the letter that Albert Pike wrote to Giuseppe Mazzini about the 3 World Wars. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Yep.
And everything was fact checked and debunked. And I was like, bro, hold on. Let me just look at the letter, okay, before you tell me what it is.
Yeah, the letter.
Yeah, and it was.
And it's. I think it's up in one of their Freemason lodges somewhere.
It wasn't a British museum for like and then they took it out. They took it down though. They took it out. Like, I can't remember when.
Pretend it doesn't exist. Yeah.
Were you the one? Because I know I saw this somewhere, and it might have been you with the Reformation and Martin Luther being a Rosicrucian.
Yes. Yeah.
Brilliant.
He had a lot of connections there that were suspect. Really suspect. So I'm going to go off on a tangent here. And I've found some information on Martin Luther that makes me think he may have been actually set up to lead the church down a certain direction. Now, I'm not saying the Reformation was a bad thing or that people within the Reformation were all bad people, because I think there were most certainly some really great people involved in this event in history. But I think that there were also some people placed amongst the Reformation that were designed to lead the Reformation in a direction that was controlled opposition. We've got the Jesuit Counter-Reformation. I've showed that a lot of these people involved in the Reformation had Jesuit family and friends. They were of suspect background. And it says here, was Martin Luther a Rosicrucian? The rose, together with the cross, is a sign of the Rosicrucian order as seen below. So we've got the rose and cross here. The cross symbolizes Christianity and the rose often symbolizes secrecy. Martin Luther's seal is also the rose and the cross, united, but differently. So here we've got Martin Luther's symbol. It's a rose with a cross in the center. It would be difficult to imagine that Martin Luther was not aware of the Rosicrucians, and even more difficult that his seal would happen by chance. Therefore, is there a link between the Rosicrucian order and the Protestant Reformation? So in this information here, it says Martin Luther, another Rosicrucian Freemason. The Reformers were Mary-honouring Masons. The Vatican's former priest, Martin Luther, was a Rosicrucian Mason and Masonic, most probably Kabbalist. It says here, the new Reformation religiously, politically, and economically. It is therefore widely believed that with the Reformation, the capstone on the Masonic pyramid, the Jewish Kabbalist Sanhedrin, in combination with their powerful workhorse, the Illuminati, secretly sponsored John Chauvin and the other reformers to break away from Catholicism to found a Protestantism, a new religion that would transform the world, not just religiously and politically, but economically as well. In this page, we've got some information about the reformers. It says the rise of capitalism and Protestant Reformation, the communist comrade Jesus of the Protestant Reformation, Master Calvin, the Dutch Reformed Methodist Pope of Geneva and his false kingdom of Christ, and human sacrifice of the reformers, John Calvin's most infamous human sacrifice to Satan. So human sacrifice of the Mary-worshipping Masonic Protestant reformers. It says the Greek mythology, Platonism, the wisdom of God is called Sophia, while Shekinah, the glory of God, is the fertility goddess of the Masonic Jewish Kabbalah. The Kabbalah Shekinah is also the divine feminine and the soul of God and man. Gleaned from paganism and the particular Masonic orders, these goddesses were Christianized by the Vatican as the feminine godmother, Mary, secretly worshipped as the Holy Spirit of the Trinity. So we now know that this Sophia of Greek philosophy comes from the Persian Zoroastrian belief. Then we have the Kabbalah, which is Chaldean, or as I like to say, the Nabatean Edomites. And we have all these reformers and philosophers of this time period preaching a dualistic and Gnostic version of the Bible, as they did in the beginning of the Roman Catholic Church. As seen below in the Masonic Signs, the Catholic statements of the Reformers, it is clear that they did not really repent from Mary worship. And we've got Martin Luther here saying the veneration of Mary is inscribed in the very depths of the human heart. Martin Luther. John Calvin, it cannot be denied that God, in choosing and destining Mary to be the mother of his son, granted her the highest honor. Ulrich Zwingli, I esteem immensely the mother of God, the ever-chaste, immaculate Virgin Mary. Above the first three images from left, the former Catholics turned reformers, Luther, Calvin, Zwingli, and others, confessed their allegiance to the Roman Catholic Holy Spirit, Mother Mary or Earth Goddess, not the true God of the Bible. With some variations, the reformers all accepted this Mother of God of Roman Catholic dogma. However, the real Mary of the Bible was merely the human mother of the man Jesus Christ. God has no mother, Hebrews 7:3. Jesus is without father, mother, genealogy having neither beginning of days nor end of life. So the last image on the right, the Masonic sign of John Calvin, father of the Dutch and other Calvinist churches. In Masonry, the supreme being is called the architect of the universe, Wikipedia wrote. John Calvin, in his Institutes of the Christian Religion, repeatedly calls the Christian God the architect of the universe, also referring to his works as architecture of the universe. In the commentary on Psalms 19, Calvin also refers to the Christian God as the great architect or architect of the universe. So pre-Lutheran John Wycliffe, translator of the Bible from Latin to English, showed his Masonic sign and declared, "It seems to me impossible that we should obtain the reward of heaven without the help of Mary. There is no sex or age or rank or position of anyone in the whole human race which has no need to call for the help of the Holy Virgin." John Wesley's Anglican Methodist reformer Calvin's right hand in Scotland also affirmed the perpetual virginity of Mary, the Mother of God. Thus, one still finds the Roman Catholic Madonna and Child with votive candle, rack, and prie-dieu in Methodist churches. So, Bible truth, 1 Timothy 2, verse 5, there is one God, one mediator between God and men, and the man Christ Jesus, who gave himself as atonement for all. Above the last three images left, the unmistakable Masonic hand on the heart sign of John Calvin, John Wycliffe, and Martin Luther has a number of Masonic meanings, but mostly it declares that they belong to Lucifer, the devil, whom all Masonic orders worship. Well, they worship the light, and that light is Sophia, so it would make sense what they're saying about Mary here. So the teachings of Masonic societies mostly adhere to 72 signs from the heart of the Celestial Mother. Well, that's kind of funny because we're just talking about the corn stalk that had 72 ears of corn on it. Is that a Masonic symbol in the early pamphlets of the Enlightenment period? Another name for Isis, Semiramis, etc., the fertility goddess, which Catholics worship as Mother Mary, the Vatican's involvement and use of secret societies and terrorist organizations undoubtedly revealed that hidden powers behind and religion had a special plan with the Reformation. The reformers, as evidenced at the top of the page, were all Mary-honoring Masons. The Vatican's former priest Martin Luther was a Rosicrucian Mason and a Masonic, most probably Kabbalist. John Calvin was a clandestine Jew called Chauvin. Some say this is untrue. Chauvin is French for Calvin. It is therefore widely believed that the Reformation, the capstone on the Masonic pyramid, the Jewish Kabbalist Sanhedrin, in combination with their powerful workhorse, the Illuminati, secretly sponsored John Calvin and all the other reformers to break away from Catholicism to found Protestantism, a new religion that would transform the world, not just religiously and politically, but economically as well. Well, and as I was saying, what came out of the Reformation and the Enlightenment period was the emancipation of the Jews and what I believe the unchaining of the dragon, the freedom for this group of the Nabatean priesthood, in my opinion, the Chaldeans or those that call themselves Jews according to Revelation, and they had the ability to do what they wanted to society, to go to war against the saints. I always was very like, yeah, Martin Luther, he fought the Catholic Church and all this sort of stuff.
Right.
And then you start looking at his history and you're kind of like, oh, here we go
Right.
again. That was really interesting for me when I went down that rabbit hole because, I was always like, oh, the Reformation was a great thing. And now, like, all of the negative stuff that came out of it. I mean, I don't know what was going on with the Catholic Church and the occult groups at that time, why they had such a big division. I think it might have been a Hegelian thing that they needed to do that because Germany was really important for them. I mean, the French Revolution, France was ruled by the crown. It was easy for them to destroy the aristocracy and take it over and get what they wanted. But Germany was all of these little tiny regions ruled by all different principalities and stuff. It was really hard for them to unite Germany and to take it over because there were so many different little regions. I mean, the Reformation basically came out of that region, right?
Yep.
It's like with Martin Luther and
so many things came out of that region, but yeah.
Well, it was really, they couldn't have the revolution that they had in America and France and those countries because Germany was not united. It was so many different little regions all broken up with different rulers who weren't on board with them, obviously.
Well,
so they had to do it through a lot of Freemasonry.
Not only that, but the Reformation, first there's the Reformation and the Counter-Reformation. You have the Counter-Reformation, which is the Catholic Church, the Reformation, which is basically the Rosicrucians. But what came out of that is all the denominations. Okay, yes. Calvinism, Lutheranism, Methodists. So now,
and pretty much all of them have suspect people that started it. I couldn't believe when I found out that the Sabbatai Sebi and I've got a name, the Sabbatean Frankists.
Sabbatean Frankists. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it all ties in with the Protestant movement and this. I think it was the Puritans. So the Puritan movement was all linked to the Sabbatai Sebi, and which is really weird because they weren't really, for them it was like redemption through sin and all that sort of stuff. But there was this, I can't remember his name. He was like a count or something who was linked to this particular royal family in Germany, and they were linked to the Church of Sabbatai Sebi. They were directly linked to a guy called Spener, and they were linked to the Mendelssohn family. And the Mendelssohn family are Rothschild. So
I remember.
Yeah. So and you just think, is this for real? Are these same people starting all these churches and everyone be, the Puritans in America, and they were moving away from the Catholic tyranny and blah blah blah. and yet they're all started. All these churches and movements are started by these people who are in with Rothschild families, and like, I mean,
Yeah.
come on, how is
Rothschild
this?
families and secret societies.
Yeah, I've said this before, like real change gets started in grassroots movements. Real government is run through community. And that's what I
Right.
realized that's what they did. They put a lot of people in grassroots communities, and I think they manipulated a lot of people and agendas via doing that. And
Yeah.
they realized that that's, people connecting is how it's done. I mean, that's how Jesus started out with the apostles, right? And also, like, they also get their agendas through, I don't know how the councils run over in America, but here we have state and federal government, but we also have councils which run the municipalities. And there was a vote in the 70s, a referendum here to vote council in, and it was voted that councils should not be real government. They're not real government. We don't want them. But they just exist anyway, regardless of the referendum. So basically, councils will say you've got to register your pets to them, you've got to, and pay your rates, the house rates. So they're supposed to, well, they do pick up the rubbish and tidy the area and everything, but they do that less and less and put the fees and the rates up more and more. And things like I was talking to you before about, you can't have cats outside now because they're not native and they kill the birds. And even though most of the birds now aren't native, and you've got to have them in cat cages and pay a fortune for it. And oh no, you can't have a cat. Well, you can, and you've got to ask permission. And the point is that councils are private, and when you really look into it, they are run by the Vatican. So the Vatican owns council. And it's always worked that way in England, in the different regions, like the Vatican or the Catholic Church would run the market towns. So the market towns would have a bridge where you have to enter, or a gate, and the Catholic Church would run the gate. You had to pay to go into the market town. They made money from the market and the merchant system, basically. So they've always run that system through councils. And we have councils here. And all of these New World Order agendas from the World Economic Forum are getting implemented via council. So they've got all these green agendas, all these like smart city, small zone agendas, 15-minute cities. And yeah, so because they can't do it through state or federal law, because constitutionally it's hard for them to get these laws in. So they're putting it through this fake government, which is run by the Vatican. And it gives me the absolute shits, because they're all like, oh, we're green and we, you can't do this or you can't do that. But then they don't want to employ enough people to clean up the parks and the waterways. And so they just spray everything with Roundup and kill everything, kill all the native animals. But with their Roundup, because they don't want to pay people to clean up and the weed and do all that stuff. And it's just totally fake. It's a fake agenda that just is designed to take our rights away from us.
The institutions of learning and the academic world are now the main mechanism for the destruction of knowledge and, of course, infiltration, the global agenda for the dumbing down of all. This reversal of the natural order is degenerating the end times scenario, where the hosts have willingly absorbed the parasite. The historical shows we do have an absolute purpose to clarify and make sure that at least a few will have the power to carry on with what is necessary and dutifully avoid the endless distractions and subversion which is imposed upon what are the willing hosts of reversal of truth. And those too distracted or shallow and indoctrinated will only have themselves to blame. The fork in the road was a long time ago, and the choice is there for those with the wisdom and insight to take it. And the reason I'm doing this is because nobody else out there covers this material, which is both puzzling and quite infuriating. So we are the only outlet which discusses this, and you have to ask yourself why. We're going to be talking about community revolutionaries. We're going to be talking about change agents. Yes, this is such an important subject, and if people do not understand this subject, they will not be able to move forward locally. And remember, it's global to local. The only thing that matters are those people in your local town hall. Yes, we're back to basics again. This article that says called Empower Your Community outlined a simple example of management, which is the overarching software of the new global system, communitarianism, done under, of course, a technocratic rollout. The hardware is the technocratic global health security system under what is in effect totalitarianism masquerading as community. The communitarian community organising groups that you will be coerced into locally use very simple methods for taking over the narrative of all public opinion. Examples such as collective action. Of course, everything has to be collectivised. And of course, when we actually look at this, there's no such thing as collective rights. That's the trick. It's all imposed from above by a hierarchy, but masquerades as collective rights. All collective rights have to come from individual rights, which is something you will never hear. Well, the change agents and their blank staring plastic smiles and irritating faces are indeed everywhere, ready to pounce and call anyone outside the Borg a far right, or of course a denier. The article Big Society Change Agents started with what you will see in your local area and what is really happening behind the green propaganda. If you live in any kind of urban environment, your surroundings are being re-engineered to be more cycling and pedestrian friendly. You will see new high-density blocks of flats being built and existing council housing destroyed. Well, you're going to see your CCTV, the beginning of gated communities, mini Tesco's, the gym and the usual corporate coffee shops and watering holes. You'll be told that public transport links are being improved. You're being encouraged to stay in one place. All of your city will be the same, so there will be no need to travel anywhere apart from going to work and coming home. You'll be given a community hub where change agents will be monitoring and dictating public opinion for you. The main thing you will notice, first of all, is that private transport and property is being restricted. Now, this has gone into a much wider area over the last few years. Remember, this article was written about 2014, and it said local businesses will be priced out and the appearance will be that they are being supported by the council. They are not. That's a very big thing that these change agent groups are against. Individual small businesses are their enemy. And this is part of a worldwide agenda to control population. This is from Big Society Change Agents again. The idea is to get large numbers of people into cities and have total police state control of population. This is all being done in London and in most towns and cities around the UK. I think people are catching up with that now. It is also happening rapidly in other countries. The main thing about this global action plan is it is being implemented with no choice, but with the appearance of public participation. You'll be told that your opinion counts and given surveys with leading questions such as how much more cycling do you want? Local businesses will be told they are being consulted. They are not. This is being implemented rapidly and the contracts will have been signed with developers already. The public consultation is a facade. Your community hub will be run by volunteers, inverted commas, and trained change agents who will be spokespersons for the new plans, which will be appearing in local newspapers, council leaflets and propaganda newspapers given away as community news run by community interest groups and companies. These will contain fluffy things about local artists and trivial stories, but amongst the waffle will be the plans being forced through, described as being improvements or regeneration. There will be stories promoting the new developments and the core principles of the agenda, which this article outlines. What you will not see are the views of real local people. Opposition groups are infiltrated and taken over as community action groups. Often the residents are encouraged to take costly court action against new proposals. The barrister or lawyer representing the opposition is in reality working for the corporate agenda. The court cases are held in private and the costs are heaped upon the opposition group, which destroys the motivation to carry on. Councillors show their support for the community, and that community is not you. It is usually them. Yes, the imposition from above, known as communitarianism, the Agenda 2030 policies. Well, all that was about 10 years ago, all that stuff I've read out. It is hidden underneath the deceptive but in fact obvious language of the network of NGOs, citizens groups, and of course charities. So, they all feed off each other and promote the same cause under a different banner. Our work on the controlled opposition and infiltration of groups has been extensive over the years. Only a few days ago, I heard someone talking about how they trained future leaders. and these are the useful idiots once talked about by the Bolsheviks. What's the definition of a change agent or a useful idiot? Let's have a look at the definition of a useful idiot. I think we actually know what a change agent is. It's someone who comes in and they talk about change, but they don't tell you what the change is. They are trained in Saul Alinsky rules, very belligerent, and they can be very engaging to start with, but once you cross the line with them, then the rules for radicals, Saul Alinsky, extreme Marxist rhetoric and war tactics come out. Polarize the enemy, freeze it, personalize it. Basically, anyone who is seen to be a problem will be attacked by what would appear to be like a pack of hyenas to destabilize the person. Okay, let's have a look at a definition of a useful idiot. It's a person perceived as propagandizing for a cause, particularly a bad cause, originating from a devious, ruthless source, without fully comprehending the cause's goals, and who is cynically being used by the cause leaders. So remember, a lot of these people are indoctrinated beyond their intelligence. In fact, most of them have very little intelligence at all, but they do have cunning and they have been trained. So this now included pretty much all of the so-called alt media we have talked about extensively, who do not report on any of this. Let's take a look. They openly are training these people who they're calling future leaders, and now we've got them in the community. So basically, they're picking out the people who are the useful idiots to train as leaders, which means that you don't have any voice locally at all, unless you can realize that these people have been put in there, parachuted in, and then you can do something about it and start fighting back against it, because the template that they use is always the same. It never changes. They just give their audience a bit of what they think they want to hear. Most of these platforms are Marxist orientated when you look at where their funding comes from. And what we are talking about here is Karl Marx's 10 planks to seize power also. So look up Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals, the 13 rules for radicals, and see if you can identify any of those being played out in your local area. Abolition of property in land and application of all rents of land to public purpose. We can see that these community groups are grabbing land, but they're not grabbing it for you, really, or the community. They're grabbing it for developers, or they're grabbing it for community hubs, or so-called community pubs. These places, of course, are hotbeds of change agents for infiltration and monitoring of what's going on. The second is a heavy progression or graduated income tax, abolition of all rights of inheritance. So yes, confiscation of property of all emigrants and rebels. So once you're seen as a rebel, then they can go after your property. Centralisation of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. Centralisation of the means of communication and transport in the hands of the state, extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state, the bringing into cultivation of wastelands, and the improvement of the soil generally in accordance with a common plan. So yeah, equal liability of all to labour, establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. Now, of course, we see that with the corporatisation of agriculture through the UN and the destruction of farming, but equal liability to all to labour is basically the communitarian system of today. Basically, gradual abolition of the distinction between town and country by a more equitable distribution of the population over the country. Well, what they're doing now, of course, under Agenda 2030 and 50, by 2050 they want everyone living in cities, or 2/3 of the world population will be pushed into cities, and the rest will be forced to leave where they are because the infrastructure will not exist in the country for them to live there. All of the causes are basically aligned with Agenda 2030. They're very Marxist, they're communitarian, and they support things like mass immigration, they support the breaking down of society. But of course, it all masquerades as a big happy clappy community where the narrative is controlled by the change agents, of course. But at the centre of these organisations, there's something very sinister, but there's nothing very clever going on with these manipulators. They're just self-serving, not very intelligent. Of course, they don't have to be intelligent. But did you know, however, that there are millions of these types all working towards the goals of the globalists who have infiltrated every country on earth? They've collectivized themselves into little groups and they all grift off each other. And the facts of the matter are the only antidote to a stream of lies is basically to know how this stream of lies is being produced and react accordingly with truth which is backed up by absolute fact. So the insertion of half-truths to pacify those who consider themselves to be cynical of the party line makes this group of waverers easy to manipulate. The term limited hangout describes a gatekeeping organisation which absorbs the energy of those who may be questioning an official narrative but are still being manipulated. This type of operation is run by gatekeepers who maintain strict limitations on the topics debated and to introduce distraction issues. These types of groups also get the participants arguing amongst each other over issues of mainly no importance. And it's the same template as is going on in your local council. But over the years I've seen these gatekeepers come and go. The main point here is that once you compromise something which is true and allow other points of view to come in and manipulate the outcome, which is in effect what happens to every group, but especially those which might have some effect, you have to really watch out for this. In this situation, you may as well be telling all lies, as any misinformation outside what is absolutely true poisons the well completely. So they don't need to infiltrate that much. All they need is a couple of change agents in any group, and they will destroy it, and they will steer it into where they want it to go, and they will cause division, or they will destroy the group completely. There is an antidote to all this, and it is to work in groups of 2 or 3 people, and you can work collectively, but you stay under the radar. Yes, your citizens' assembly should basically be like a secret society. In other words, the leader is hidden behind, say, 12 other members, as in the Rosicrucians. Have a look at the Rosicrucian mystery at windsortheworld.net, and that's a concise way of how these secret societies, or they're not secret, are they? If they were secret, you wouldn't have heard of them. They're made to be public, of course, because they have a public and a private face. The truth can look so outlandish, the public cannot believe the truth, because the lies are so audacious. The professional liars or agents of change infest all public office. State actors lying for a living, indeed, even those who appear to oppose the state are the state. The use of the word grassroots, of course, has been hijacked to mean state-controlled and agents of the UN, IMF and World Bank, who back all of these organisations. So these people are driving global policy through local initiatives, and it's all being infiltrated into your community, or your so-called community. So nothing out of the ordinary here, just Marxist communists, globalist stooges and controlled opposition with some useful idiots. It's using the same template over and over again to control the narrative and push forward the Agenda 2030 goals through, yes, useful idiots. The globalists to localists want the permanent revolution. They want the protest movement. They want collective rights over the rights of the individual. They want the consensus reality. They want the science, which is not science by definition. And the arrival at a conclusion through factual observation is now just for the common good. No facts necessary. In other words, science isn't something that's proved by a series of facts. Science is basically repeated and imposed on people as though it's true when it isn't. Because if you don't understand this, you don't understand the system, and you never will. That's why I say, these are not my opinions, this is their system I'm telling you about after all this study. And the centralisation of power has been the ultimate goal. Centralising what is perceived as decentralised power is now the decoy. So the centralisation of power is talked about, but centralising what is perceived as decentralised power is the decoy. In other words, we are looking at a broken up system. It appears broken up, but it's all joined together with one aim. So in other words, it's decentralised and unstructured in the eyes of the public. It's unstructured in the eyes of the public, but it's highly structured. It's overstructured. And that's their fatal weakness. And now we get on to devolution, which is what is coming, what we are in. Devolution means the power is now where we always said it was, locally. This is massive, and the scale of it is beyond anything the general public could possibly imagine. It's not been seen by them, but it's not hidden. Devolution is degeneration into the new system. Your local council will not want you talking about devolution, as it is the degeneration of everything that the public believes the system is. So NGOs fronted by trained globalist puppets are making the decisions which run your life. Did you know that? That's true. That corporate stakeholders are the controllers of what happens on your doorstep.
My point is that's how they're working, through grassroots, through small government. So it's the same way that we get to change it is through those levels, the small community.
Right.
And they know that. They've always worked that way, and that's how I realized they worked in the Reformation. Is they put people into the community like Martin Luther and different people, the guy who
The Calvinists.
they were all part of, like,
John Calvin.
Who's the other one that wrote, what's that Bible? Is it the Bible before the actual King James version? What was
The Geneva?
The Geneva Bible,
That was,
yeah. Who was behind that?
There was a bunch of guys. I think Calvin might have been part of it. Hold on.
Yeah, it was Calvin and I'm not saying the Geneva Bible was bad, but he was part of that group, which made me remember that Bible. And he was a horrible person, but like they're in these small groups in communities, using this Hegelian principle to change society to suit what they want. And I think that they used Protestantism and people's anger towards the control of the church and the state system to change society to the way they wanted it, using secret societies and religion.
Instead of being governed by a king, you're going to be governed by a city council or like a small council. Don't worry, you're still going to be governed. Okay. In fact, I love how we've gone from the Council of Trent and these councils then to the councils you're talking about, the city councils, who I was doing a lot of research on this. They want the city councils to actually have the power now. It's going to be it's called devolution. Okay, it's like the devolution of government. That's what it's called.
They can't override. Like, you guys have got a great constitution. Like, we do have a constitution. A lot of the rules, it's like they cannot implement what they want to do because of our constitutional laws and rights in state and federal governments. So you guys are better off than we are, but we still have a constitution and constitutional rights from when federation. And the way they get around it is to say, we're going to be now run by a council at a small level. It's so much better for the community. Yeah.
Do you want to know? There's 3 guys who run this. So we have counties, okay, in Ohio. It's separated by counties, and 3 guys run the entire county. There's Mahoning County that I'm in. They're all 32-degree Freemasons.
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
All 3 of them.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I looked at some of the other counties, and it'll tell you. You can go to this commissioner site where you can see like what all their status stuff they have. It'll say 32nd degree. It'll literally tell you. Okay. And they're all 32nd degree Freemasons. So they're not 33 degree, but you got to be usually like a president or something.
One of our prime ministers was 33 degree, yeah. So like I don't know about the other ones, but I know one specifically. So get a step up, I guess, from council to.
So it's just even these city councils are all. Look, when I was doing the East Palestine thing, train derailment, the mayor of East Palestine was a high-level Freemason. Okay, I mean they're all Freemasons. Yeah. So
this is how they do it too. Like I was thinking about it today. Like we get tired. We're trying to put information out there in our own little way. We get tired. Life comes along, and they've just got this endless resource of generations of people that are just constantly doing their work for them. Yeah, how do you stop that?
Seriously,
it's hard.
It's hard.
Like that's what convinces me we're in the little season. I mean, it's a different topic and everything, but my main thing is the whole Herod dragon thing. That stop looking at this boogeyman Satan who's living in the basement of the Vatican controlling everyone, that's what a lot of people think. It's like Satan's got some realm and there's a secret entrance to the Vatican or something.
Well, they want people to think that. They want that. Yeah.
Stop thinking that. It's family lines and it's politics. I mean, the Bible tells us that. Stop looking at it that way. And I think that if the Bible tells us anything, like prophetically, it's that Jesus will come along and whatever that means, because I don't even now personally believe that maybe we have this sort of biblical image that we're going to see Jesus in the clouds and he's going to come back, and do away with everything. And that'd be great if that was true, but maybe
Mhm.
Jesus coming back is just without getting too new agey, is like people just realizing and having an awareness and awakening spiritually or mentally. You know how you just have a revelation and you know something or
Yeah.
you believe something and you cannot change that. Maybe it is maybe we do get a physical change, but the Bible talks a lot about the veil, and we're blinded because there's a veil between. Maybe that's removed. That whatever that veil is. I like to watch a lot of
Mhm.
near death experiences, and that people say they see when they have near death experience that it's more real than this life, and they know everything and they
Yeah,
can
that's
see
interesting.
everything clearly, and they can be in many places all at once, and there's no time, and that's everything that the Revelation talks about. Are we? I'm not saying we're all going to die all at once, maybe, but I don't know. I think when that veil's removed, maybe we'll know and be able to see in that same way.
I mean, yeah, it could be that way. It could be a mixture of both. How would you metaphorically say that the dead will in Christ will raised first? Like they'll come back and then we'll be changed. Like we'll get new bodies and stuff like that. It's kind of hard
Yeah,
to
yeah. That's. I think.
metaphorically say
I
that.
actually think that's going to happen. I think it's already happened. Like I made that point, like when the dead were resurrected in when Jesus died. That
Yeah.
was the first resurrection. Right? They were
Right.
walking. What's strange is like people have near death experiences, and they some people say that they're still here and they don't even realize they're dead. They're walking around trying to talk to people and they can see life, and they don't realize until they see their body that they're dead, and then they can go to heaven or different places, or I don't know. Look, I believe there's too many people that have had this experience to say that it's not real. Maybe we do get a resurrection body that's can move between those different dimensions, if you want to put it that way. It says that the body is a light body. It's different. So when Jesus was resurrected, he was able to be touched physically by Thomas, but he could also move
Like phase
between
through walls
walls and
and
rooms
stuff.
and just show up in
Yeah.
a room or disappear. I mean, what kind of body
Well,
is it, you know?
and again, I see now. I don't think that this might sound weird, but I don't think we're going to live in heaven. I think we're gonna actually still
No.
going to live here
Yeah.
because it says there's new heaven and new earth, and really the heavens are just the sky. Okay, it even says in the Bible that the first heaven is where the birds fly. It literally
Yeah.
says that.
Yeah.
Okay, it says it in the Bible, and so I think just the higher you go up, it's just. So I don't think we're going to be sitting on clouds. I mean, you might be able to do that, but I really think we're going to live here and we're just going to have like superpowers basically. Didn't the apostles, didn't the disciples get like powers, like the healing powers and all that
Yeah.
stuff?
Yeah.
Remember you were talking about that?
Yeah.
It's
Well, I
just
mean,
interesting that they were able to do all that.
I went down this whole rabbit hole recently, and I was talking to you about it, of manifesting, and I just come to the
Yeah.
realization, and this is something I came up with Genesis actually. With light and what we see. I was talking about photography and how you got positive and negative, and then with electricity you got positive and negative, and light and dark. That's the reality of of the physical world. But people say, I was watching a video and it was like, the whole Schrodinger, is it Schrodinger's cat
Mm-hmm.
scenario? Like, is the
Yeah.
cat dead or is it alive in the box? Which is kind of bloody cool, really. But unless you look at it, there's two possible realities right there, and that's all part of that quantum physics thing. But this particular physicist was saying that when we look at something, that can become reality. So there's two different potentials for the physical. When they're looking at an atom, there's two potentials of which way it can go or something along those lines. So what we look at becomes reality. So it's
Mm-hmm.
from our perspective, like it's our reality is what we think, how we think about it. And this is, I think it's true to a certain extent, is like, and this is how these powers work, is first they have to create a reality that we all believe, and as a collective consciousness species, we all make it reality. So what is actually real? Like, this is this whole matrix thing. Are we in a matrix? Is it real? I mean, I think it's real to how God wants it to be real. He's made a physical world and reality, but because it's, when you look at it atomically, it's all just vibrating particles and stuff, and it can be manipulated in that sense. So and then you go into those studies from the Japanese, I can't remember his name, with water, and he puts different words on water
I
and it
knew you were going
changes.
to talk about that.
Yes, I mean, because
Yep.
that's so interesting,
Yep.
right? Like
I
how
was
can
just watching that.
feelings
Yeah.
and words change structures of like crystals?
This next series of photographs are the work of Japanese researcher Mr. Masaru Emoto from his book, The Message from Water. Mr. Emoto's work provides factual evidence that human vibrational energy, thoughts, words, ideas, and music affect the molecular structure of water. Please remember that water comprises over 70% of a mature human body and covers the same amount on our planet. Water is the very source of all life. This photo shows the beautifully formed geometric design of the Yushi Spring water. This next photo is from the Shimanto River, the last clean spring in Japan. The fact that the molecular structure of water can be affected by our consciousness, our intent, and our sounds is extremely important. This photo is from the Mount Cook Glacier in New Zealand. Mr. Emoto has been visually documenting these molecular changes in water by means of his photographic techniques. He freezes droplets of water, then examines them under a dark field microscope that has photographic capabilities. His work clearly demonstrates the diversity of the molecular structure of water and the effects of the environment upon the structure of the water. This photo is from the fountain in Lourdes, France. This photo is from contaminated water from the Yodo River in Japan. In this photo we can compare the contaminated water with clean stream water. Look at the difference. Mr. Emoto decided to see what effects music would have upon the structure of water. He placed distilled water between two speakers for several hours while playing different music and then photographing the crystals that formed after the water was frozen. This photo is of water being exposed to Beethoven's Pastorale. This photo is the effect of Bach's Air for the G-string on the water. This photo is water exposed to Chopin's Farewell Song. This next photo is water being exposed and affected to music that was designed for healing. This photo is of water being exposed to the Kawachi folk dance. This photo shows the effect of heavy metal music upon the water. Here now we can compare the effects of healing versus heavy metal music and what happens to the water molecules. Mr. Emoto decided to see how thoughts and words affected the formation of untreated distilled water crystals by typing words onto paper and then taping this paper onto glass bottles overnight. This photo shows the effects of the words, "Thank you." This next photo shows the effects of the words, "Love and Appreciation." This photo shows the effects of the words, "You make me sick, I will kill you." And here we can compare the effects of "thank you" with the "you make me sick, I will kill you." Very, very different geometric forms being incurred through the intention. Now this photo is of a very polluted and toxic water from the Fujiwara Dam. Here now is the same water from the Fujiwara Dam after a Buddhist monk had offered a prayer over it. Prayer, that sound coupled with intention, seems to have an extraordinary ability of restoring water to its natural, harmonious, geometric symmetry. And in this photo we can compare the toxic water and then the effects of praying over the water.
Yeah, and so I think this is how they work through media, and this is how they've got really damn good at it, is manipulating the collective understanding of our reality and and how it should go. Because I've always said to myself, why do people just assume that life has to be this way? Why do we have to do all these, jump through all these hoops and do everything the way they want us to do it? It hasn't always been this way, but people act as if it's always been this way and it always has to be this way. And they're creating the reality. And what I realized about manifestation, rather than like not in a sense of it's like a magic trick or it's a genie and you can get wishes, but you know, everybody's manifesting their life. People who have a good job or make a lot of money, they've manifested that by, okay, the way they think is, I'm going to go to university, I'm going to study this subject for so many years. I mean, that doesn't guarantee you're going to go into that job and earn that money, but because they're constantly thinking about it for so many years and believing that at the end of this course, I'm going to get this job and I'm going to make this money, then realistically they've manifested it, right? Because they've just put all their energies into researching and learning and studying this specific thing that's now become reality in their life. So that's how I think how it works. But the point this quantum physicist guy was making was that what we look at becomes reality when we look at it. And it's kind of like it ties in with all this, the light and the dark, and we can only really see something because it's reflecting light or it's absorbing light. So like black absorbs all the colors, white reflects all the colors, and pink will absorb just the pink spectrum. And that's why either absorb or reflect. No, sorry. Pink will, I think, reflect just the pink spectrum. That's how it works. It's not really pink. It's like it's a play on light and electromagnetic frequencies. And, you know, Freemasonry is all about like black and white tiles and negatives and positives. And yeah, I think that's where this concept of dark is evil, light is good, but it's not. In the beginning of Genesis, it's just saying he divides the dark from the light. Doesn't mean that make the dark bad or the negative bad. Same with electricity, you know, you've got positive and negative and north and south, and then one's not better than the other. They coincide together. But, you know, we've been given this demiurge sort of scenario through Kabbalism that there's this evil black entity and there's this good light entity and they're fighting each other constantly, you know. Dualism, yeah. And the only way I can see dualism in reality is in ourselves, is because we're fighting our own nature.
Absolutely.
And it's all tied to electromagnetic light, really. Even like just the reality.
Well, we're electric.
Yeah, we're electric. Everything we see is light, reflection or whatever of light and atoms and manifestation. And the Bible, Jesus says about the eyes are the lights of the soul. So what you're shining your light on, what you're looking at, constantly becomes your reality, right? So if it tells you not to dwell on bad and evil, right? So if you're dwelling on those things all the time, you're manifesting that character. You're becoming that person.
Absolutely.
And it says dwell on the good things of life, and the light, whatever you look at, is the light that you're bringing into your life, and then shining back to other people. So you're the light on the hill, and don't, you know, the parables of don't cover the light and all of that sort of stuff that Jesus was talking about. But it's interesting because the Freemasons, what do they say? They have they can see in the darkness or something.
They really make it literal. I know they have an esoteric and exoteric view of it, but a lot of it's just if you're positive and if you think positive, good. I mean, I'm not saying good things will happen, but I'm saying I try and have a really positive attitude about everything. It's not easy, but as opposed to being somebody who's worried, depressed, sad, scared, you know, those negative emotions will make you miserable. Okay.
Yep.
There's some people that just, and so even if, look, it's not easy to have a positive attitude, but I really do try to with life, and it helps. It helps a lot of things.
It does. And like, I mean, if I often think like if we had some sort of awakening where something happened that changed the way people think about everything, then, or change, which is possible.
This is making me think of something. Now, are you aware that the Hebrew word for fire is the same word for lightning? I think you know that.
Yep.
Because the
Muhammad's
Bible
horse
talks
is
about the,
like named after lightning. So
yeah, exactly. Barack or something like that. But like it's interesting that the Bible has things like baptism by fire. Fire is mentioned in Revelation. Well, didn't it say something about there'll be fire in the sky or something like that?
the first destruction of the earth was through water, and then the second would be fire. But I've heard
But
that metaphorically that would be the baptism of fire, because first we're baptized in water and second we're baptized in fire.
exactly, exactly. So is that kind of going to what you're saying? What if our DNA is changed by electric stuff? But that's also fire. Electricity is fire. It's the same element. Okay?
Well, that's why a lot of the New Agers go into like the Kundalini thing, saying that because that's an electrical thing that happens with the spine. I don't know much because I can't really relate to that personally, but that's an electrical thing that happens in the spine, and it's supposed to be like an awakening. And people, I believe people really do experience this from what they're spoken about, and they have an enlightenment or a change of mind that can't be changed back because they know now.
Right.
They've changed. The same with a rebirth or a baptism, a belief. It's like I've people who have been completely cured of drug addictions and things like that instantly, because they just can't do it anymore. In their mind, it's just like, wow, I just know I can't do this. A rebirth as a Christian is a complete turnaround from and a knowledge of just knowing, not knowing everything, but just knowing I can't do this, and I believe that there's a God, and I believe that there's a spiritual world, and I know now.
Yeah.
So no matter what somebody says, they cannot convince me otherwise. Like we're talking yesterday with the NPC people. They're just they're just people that haven't had that. I mean, they're just on a program, and they just keep doing the same thing, and you can't change them because they just won't know. And I think that at some point in history, we're all just going to know. And there's going to be those people that go, oh crap, why didn't I listen? And there's people that are going to be like, oh, yes, and finally we don't have to put up with all this crap and live in this darkness that these people are creating.
That's true. There's also the free will thing, though. There's some people that don't care. Even if you told them and they knew, what if they still didn't care? You know what I mean? I still think there's people out there that are like that.
Yeah, and I think the people that run our planet are like that. They don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's ignorance. Like, I think they're so much into the occult, and I think it's like the handwriting on the wall when King Cyrus takes over Babylon. They're all just having a party.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, look at us, huh?
Yeah.
We don't care. And it's like, we can't be touched. We're just untouchable. And then all of a sudden, that's how stupid they are. That's how into themselves they are. That they don't think that this is going to happen to them. I think we're very close to a time when it will happen to them. I really do. I really think things are going to change in our lifetime very shortly.
I do believe. I mean, because again, they have control of the whole world, so they can't really get much more.
And I think that's the end of the dragon. It's the end of the little season. Yeah. It's had its season. It's had its time, and whatever that means for Jesus coming back and whatever, and them getting destroyed. It's the end of it.
Yep.
Yeah.